Whenever I talk about transphobia, I always find myself repeating myself over and over again saying this doesn't make sense. The arguments don't add up, they just sound silly. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna make an entire video about it. Welcome. Hey Spuds, how's it going? Welcome back to another video. First video, I don't know, but welcome either way. My name is Jamie, and I'm very glad to have you here. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we're looking at a little bit of transphobia, but with a twist. It's always with a twist. We're not just gonna be like, here is transphobia, because that's miserable, because we need to have either a laugh at it or a giggle or deconstruct it, say how wrong it is, or all of the above, because typically all of the above apply, unless it's particularly frustrating and then you might just be too angry to laugh. Anyway, in today's video we're going to be looking at some instances of transphobia that just don't make sense and really highlight the ridiculousness of people being transphobic. But before we get into today's video, I want to talk to you about today's video sponsor, ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN is a virtual private network, a VPN offering you internet privacy, security, and access to thousands of new TV shows. ExpressVPN works by creating this snugly secured tunnel of safety between your device and the internet. It keeps you safe by encrypting 100% of your network data, because when you use unencrypted Wi-Fi networks, your data is open to interception and nobody wants that. I personally very much appreciate my information remaining my information. ExpressVPN also protects your online privacy, and we all like a little bit of privacy, right? But did you know that internet service providers can see every site you visit, even when you're in incognito mode? And in the US, they can even legally sell your data to ad companies. While ExpressVPN again encrypts your data and reroutes your connection through their secure servers, stopping everyone from seeing everything you do. And not only will your internet information be nice and secure and also private and remain yours, but you'll also be able to unblock content and websites and streaming services that are not available in your country. Want to watch The Godfather but you're in the UK? Not a problem with ExpressVPN. You can just connect to a different country server of your choice. In this case it would be Canada, and voila, you have unblocked all of the content available in that country. On top of all this, ExpressVPN is the top rated VPN you can get, and it has the fastest speeds. So find out how you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free below by visiting expressvpn.com/Jammidodger or clicking on the link in the description box. Now back to the video. Thank you very much for listening. We're gonna kick it off with an interesting one. I think somebody was filling out a questionnaire or a form or something, and they got very upset by some of the options on this form that they felt the need to write on the form about their upset. So, the following questions will help us to see how experiences vary between different groups of the population. We will keep your answers completely confidential, and they will not be linked to your medical records. It's blurry, it's making my eyes feel funny. Which of the following best describes you? And they've crossed that out to say, which sex are you? And the options were female, male, non-binary, prefer to self-describe with a little box, and prefer not to say. They've crossed out non-binary and prefer to self-describe. They have left prefer not to say. And they ticked female, little arrow, an adult human female, underlined. This is pandering to a sexist reactionary belief system. No, it's just asking how you describe your identity, and not everybody identifies as a man or a woman. Is your gender identity the same as the sex you were registered at birth? They've circled ender identit and done exclamation points. They've crossed out everything, so it's yes, no, prefer not to say, just like crossed it all out. I do not believe in gender ideology. It is regressive sexist nonsense. As such, I do not have a gender identity. There is evidence that gender identity and sex are separate things. If people would prefer not to describe themselves as having something separate because the two are the same, fair enough, but it doesn't mean that that's the case for everybody. And then at the bottom of the page, there's the University of Cambridge Medical School. They've circled medical school, arrow, should be ashamed of themselves for asking anti-scientific questions about, I don't know, about something. Gender ideology is sexist, misogynistic rubbish. Shame on Exeter and Cambridge unis. Trans people exist. And denying that fact is within your right, but that is what is anti-scientific. I don't know why there is such a strong thing of like trans inclusion is sexism or misogyny. I don't understand that. I get called TERF because I believe women have a right to our own sports, prisons, refuges and spaces, and because I believe children should be protected from people who seek to sexualize them and to confuse them about who they are. Happy to stand for what I do. I think the reason you get called a TERF is because you believe trans people are the problem and you think that trans women do not belong in women's spaces, which they do. I also believe that all women women have a right to their own sports, prisons, refuges and spaces. Just my definition of that includes trans women because trans women are women. And in terms of protecting children, yes, children should be protected. Trans kids should be allowed to be trans and be allowed to live in a way that is authentic to them. Don't waste your time talking to someone who is brainwashed by the trans cult. Signs are the use of pronouns, calling people cis, using the word transphobic or transphobia instead of arguments, using the term TERF. It's all rubbish. People have just started calling the trans community a cult to make it sound scary and to try and like gain traction in their argument. And then they go and say stuff like the signs of being brainwashed by the trans cult are using pronouns. Everybody uses pronouns. Therefore, everybody has been brainwashed by the trans cult. Calling people cis. I made an entire video about the prefix cis. It's not a bad thing. Using the word transphobic or transphobia instead of arguments. How about both? Also, if somebody is being discriminatory towards trans people and saying stuff like brainwashed by the trans cult, you are kind of just being transphobic. Using the term TERF. I am not a fan of the term TERF because it says trans exclusionary radical feminist, and I think it's just a too nice way of saying transphobe. TERFs are just transphobes. Rad feminism includes trans men since they are female and not trans women since they are not. Therefore, calling feminists trans exclusionary is the equivalent of calling them blue-eye exclusionary. Sure, some blue-eyed people happen to be excluded if they are male. Oh. In theory, some like people who are labelled TERFs will be like, yeah, trans men are included. But then when you actually push for it and it's like, yes, but all of these spaces that you're saying you don't want trans women in, would you want a trans man in? They don't. They don't want trans men in them either. I also think transphobes should just avoid metaphors as a general rule because they typically do not help their arguments at all. It's because you are excluding trans women because they are trans. Therefore, you are trans exclusionary. To be silent is to be complicit. From the very well-known transphobe Graham Lynham. Is that a man? Yeah. The point with this one is that the guy in the photograph is a trans man who was forced to still compete in the women's wrestling category. He was not allowed to wrestle in the men's category despite being a man. And a transphobe thinks that's like a gotcha moment when actually it proves the opposite. That's a trans man who was forced to do that by transphobes. Stop transing LGB kids. Protect kids from Big Pharma. No child is born in the wrong body. We love you just the way you are. Well, clearly you don't. That's a bit rich. Transing isn't even a word. So what about gay trans people? So trans people that before they transitioned would have probably identified as straight. Are they allowed to trans? It's such bullshit. And it's all like Big Pharma. There's no conspiracy. This is like saying men get pregnant. This is incorrect and misleading. Transphobe. I'm not a trans phone charger. I said men can't have their periods. Biologically born men cannot have their periods. I'm not a trans phone charger. I'd like to see what a trans phone charger looks like. Saying cannot have their periods makes it sound like they do have periods because they, they're their periods. I do think that replying to the original post of this is like saying men get pregnant, this is incorrect and misleading, by just saying transphobe, it's not the most effective thing. Either just ignore them or give like a proper explanation about why that's wrong. And like, trans men are men who are assigned female at birth. Not all men have the same anatomy. Therefore, some men, i.e. trans men, can have periods and can get pregnant. And, then if it's like, well, trans men aren't real men, then transphobe. It's lost cause. You can't change your gender. You're right. No matter whether you're trans or cis, you'll always be the gender you identify as. That'll never change. Thank you. Someone had to say it. Trans people don't change their gender. I think the word transgender is slightly confusing. It's not like going from one to the other gender. It's saying that your gender is different to your assigned sex or your assigned gender. Yeah, my gender's always been man. Tory peer Baroness Nicholson thinks calling women people is misgendering. People isn't a gender. Also, women aren't people. You cannot misgender by using gender-neutral language. Also, women aren't being called people. People is being used as an inclusive language. So where I've seen this is like people who have periods or like people who menstruate. It's saying that more than women can experience this. Therefore, we're making the language neutral. Gender neutral. Therefore, we can't misgender people. You're either a woman or a man. Women have reproductive organs. Men don't. It's as simple as that. Ah, yes. The two genders, reproductive organs organs and no reproductive organs. Just, that's not how anything works, is it? And that's it. Thank you for joining me in this video of transphobia doesn't make sense. It really just doesn't. Yeah, if you like this video, think about giving it a thumbs up and subscribing if you want to, but no pressure. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Much love. Bye.